Welcome everyone to the Next Best Picture podcast, where we are talking with Michael Shannon, one of the stars of The End. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Very excited to talk to you about this film. It was one of my favorites out of the Toronto Film Festival this year, and I can't wait for more people to see it. I'm curious, when you first became attached to this project and what made you say yes to doing it.
Well, there's a filmmaker I've worked with named Ramin Barani on 99 Homes and Fahrenheit 451. And Ramin and Josh are friends. And I guess Ramin was kind of helping shepherd the project along. And I guess he might have mentioned my name to Josh, and they had a discussion. And Josh said, "Oh, I would love to meet him." And so Ramin reached out to me, and then Josh and I just met at a coffee shop in my neighborhood. We had a lovely discussion, and then he gave me the script, and once I read it, I agreed to do the picture.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, how complete was the script? Were all the songs in it and everything?
The lyrics were in the script.
Yeah.
The music, I didn't hear the music until after I signed on, but the lyrics for the songs were in the script, so I just read them. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and you are in a band, but you've very rarely, I think, if ever, actually sung in a film or on screen. Were you a little nervous to do that for the first time in a musical, or were you excited, like bring it on, or how this is different for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had done a series, George and Tammy, where I played George Jones,
Yes.
so I had sang quite a bit on that.
Hmm.
But uh, I mean, this is kind of different, kind of a different presentation, I
Hmm.
suppose, because in
Yeah.
George and Tammy, I was just performing songs the way George would, and then in this one, it's a narrative that weaves in and out of music somewhat mysteriously.
Yeah.
So that's different. But um, I wasn't I wasn't really scared of it because I knew the singing was character singing. It wasn't like we were supposed to sound like ourselves. We weren't supposed to sound like, Pavarotti or something. It sounds like I'm, some old dude singing a song, which I was fairly comfortable with. Yeah.
Yeah. It you're absolutely right. And all the singing in amongst the whole cast, you really get a sense of who these people are just by how
How
they
they
singing.
sing. Yeah.
Yeah. Did I don't know if any members of the cast work with like vocal coaching, or if there was any sort of direction on like how specifically each character should sound when they sing.
Well, there was a pretty intensive rehearsal process
Mm,
before we started shooting the film. For weeks, we were in Ireland,
mm,
having these very regimented this daily schedule of singing
mm,
rehearsals, some dancing rehearsals for some of us, and then doing table work and blocking and things like that. So uh, yeah, and there were coaches aplenty. Yeah, people
mhm.
help.
Yeah.
A lot of pre-recording and a lot of opportunities to get comfortable with the music. I
Mhm.
mean, it is very demanding music. Our composer was not shy about putting 3 octaves in a song. But again, we knew that it didn't have to be perfect or
Yeah.
anything. It just needed to be true. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And speaking of the truth, like the vibe in the bunker in the film is kind of somewhat forced happiness. I
Hmm.
would say, they're sort of like working on making a very positive environment.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what the vibe was like on set and what kind of ship Joshua Oppenheimer ran as a director.
Well, I would say for the most part, we were all very, happy to be there. A lot of that really has to do with Tilda. I mean, she's such
Mm,
a magnificent leader of all of us. She has such a big, true heart and is so caring and thoughtful and always keeping an eye out.
mm,
But I would be lying if I said there weren't some long days, some hard days, some frustration sometimes about, when you're trying to get a musical number with an ensemble in it and there's a lot of camera movement and there's
mhm,
not a lot of coverage. It's very demanding
mhm,
challenge. Um, and there were some things that we did quite a few takes of to get to the place where Josh saw and heard what he was envisioning. And and Josh is very dogged, relentless in his pursuit of uh, actualizing these characters in this situation. You might come away thinking that you kind of gotten to the bottom of something, and he would push you to keep keep looking.
mm,
Probably that's probably something ingrained into him as a documentarian, because that's what
yeah,
documentarians do. They keep looking. Like, have I found everything yet? Probably not.
yeah.
I should
Do,
keep asking questions. Yeah.
do you remember a specific moment where you kind of thought like, yeah, I've gotten to the core of Father in this moment, and he was like, go a little deeper.
I can't think of a particular moment. It was just kind of
Mm,
his flow from start to finish.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like a lot of that frankly was in the rehearsal process when we would sit
mm,
around and talk about
mhm,
our history as a group and as
yeah.
individuals and what we meant to each other and how we were connected and all of that. Once we were on set, it was less so that way.
Mhm. I, I know a lot of films aren't as lucky to have a large amount of rehearsal time and an intensive rehearsal process. It's a little more necessary for something like a musical with all the blocking and very stage-like things you have to do. But as an actor, how much do you find that period of intense rehearsal time helps you when it gets to the time when you have to perform on set?
Well, I tend to agree with you in this situation. It seemed pretty necessary. I I have mixed feelings about it, though. I feel like a
Mm,
lot of times when people attempt to rehearse films, it doesn't really lead to much.
mm,
A lot of times, I feel like people don't really know how to do it. Um,
mm.
I only say that as an actor who's
Sure.
spent as much time in the theater as I
Mm,
have anywhere else.
yeah.
So I'm accustomed to the theater rehearsal, and I've worked with some spectacular directors in the theater, and that's usually a more comprehensive and rewarding experience. I find for film, like a lot of times, I prefer not to rehearse and to get the first go around on camera if you can. And when
Oh,
I
wow.
directed my own film,
Yeah.
which will be coming out, I think next year, I would film the first take, the first run a lot of times.
Oh, wow.
I feel like there's something that happens in that that doesn't happen again the first time you do something.
Hmm.
Not that I necessarily used it all that much. I think a lot of times I probably didn't use the first take, but I like to have it as an option. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was critical for this film, not just because it had singing and dancing in it, but because it was a very specific reality that we were trying to create. and it was a reality filled with questions and mysteries, kind of beyond our capacity really to imagine. I kept saying, I don't understand how someone could spend 25 years down here and not completely lose their mind. So that was a question that we had to formulate some sort of answer to, and it wasn't a question that any of us could answer individually. We needed to answer it as a group. So that's why the rehearsal, I feel like, was essential.
Mhm. And you're working with this ensemble of actors, and you have to create a very different, very specific relationship with each of them that you develop over the course of the film. I particularly enjoyed watching the relationship between father and butler, which, to put it lightly, is complicated.
Hmm.
But there there are all these things that are happening in the background of scenes with the two of them. And I'm curious, what if there was a particular moment that you really found that you had in like the background of a scene that some of the audience members may miss while watching it?
Oh. Hmm. That's an interesting question. I don't know, honestly, if I can
Mm.
curate it like that,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, my philosophy with things is I don't like to give instructions on how to watch something,
Mm.
because I feel like people, honestly, left to their own devices, do a better job of it, than I would.
Sure.
But it is a fascinating relationship. There's no doubt about it. Tim's character Butler was not my Butler above ground. Butler
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a friend of mine, and I wanted, the same way that Tilda's character, Mother, gets to bring her friend,
Right.
and friend becomes our chef.
Hmm.
Tim's character, Butler, is an old friend of mine. We imagine we actually known each other since we were kids.
Mm.
And the deal I brokered with him was, I'd like to bring you down here, but in order to justify it, I think I'm going to need you to have a job,
Yeah.
because everyone down here except for me and my wife,
Mm.
they got to be doing something. And so I asked this friend of mine to become our butler, and he agreed to it because he's like, well, better than staying up here, I guess. But I also think, yeah, there's a deep bond between the two of them,
Hmm.
um, and there's a lot of mystery around it, and I like keeping it mysterious.
I like that too. I know we're coming up on the end of our time together, but one of the more fascinating things I found in this movie is that father is having his son write his memoirs for him, but he doesn't so much insist on being truthful as he does allow his son to extrapolate from very basic stories about his life. And
Hmm.
he sort of fills in the blanks with, of course, my father is fantastic,
Hmm.
right? So I'm
Yeah.
curious if you had your children write your memoirs for you,
Hmm.
what sort of things would they say about you?
Oh dear, I don't really know. I mean, it's an evolving thing. My daughters
Mm,
are 16 and 10,
mm,
and we've had a lot of ups and downs. It's very hard when
mm,
you have a parent in this business, because I go away a lot.
yeah.
This year I was in Budapest for 6 months.
Mhm.
I had two jobs over there, and I was gone a lot. And but I think that the time that we do have together, um, I think there's a lot of warmth in it. I think we're close. I also think we're, as your children grow up, they start to expand and kind of move
Mhm.
away from a little bit. But I think the one thing I'm pretty sure about is they would feel comfortable writing anything that they felt was true, because I wouldn't I've never encouraged them to idolize me in any way, shape, or form. They know that I'm a deeply flawed human being, and they accept it, and I give them everything that I'm capable of giving them, and they appreciate it.
And that's exactly what this family is trying to do in the film too, and to
Yeah,
varying degrees of success, of
yeah.
course.
It's important I said this earlier to somebody that what father's really trying to do, the book isn't really for father's benefit, because I don't genuinely believe that father's forgotten what happened.
Hmm.
What he's trying to do is he's trying to instill in son a sense of pride about his legacy, so that
Hmm.
when father's gone, son doesn't have to hate himself.
Hmm.
Like he's trying to protect son from his actual legacy. And that's a very prevalent theme in our culture. If
Yeah.
you look at the way we try to ignore all the shitty things that we've done and present ourselves as, you know, upstanding
Hmm.
Americans to our children, and
Hmm.
even to, you see it with the awakening of the woke culture, and how there's this bitterness about it. Like, don't teach our kids to hate America. I'm like, they're like, we're not teaching them to hate anything. We're just trying to tell them the truth. We're trying to
Yeah.
tell them what actually happened. It's incredible how difficult it is to tell people what actually happened.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because some people think it's damaging for your children to know. You don't want them to be disheartened or to feel like they participated in some crime that they weren't around to witness. But the fact is, it's the truth. So
Yeah. And there's a big difference between, hating something and thinking critically about it. And I
right.
think that that's something that this film encourages people to do, is think critically about their past actions and how that will affect them in the future. And that's one of the things that I thought was so wonderful about it.
Well, that's very eloquent, Daniel. I
Yeah.
think you're exactly right.
Thank you. Well, and you've been very eloquent in speaking with us today. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for your work on the film. Looking forward to seeing your next one.
Thank you for supporting us.
Welcome.